Hello and welcome to 3D modeling for computer animation. This first video is going to introduce the Maya 2022 interface. When you open up Maya for the first time, you'll notice that the majority of the interface is made up of this giant viewport, and this is our portal into our 3D scene. The interface is made up of different panels and windows that have a particular layout. And we can change this layout by going to Maya Classic. Here, this drop-down menu, workspace drop-down menu, and there are a couple different default workspaces. And this will just change the arrangement of some of the different windows and panels, depending on what you're using Maya for. You're also able to adjust the viewport. And if you do that, you can go down to reset current workspace to reset it back to the way that it had previously been set up, or to its default. So I would recommend working in Maya Classic. At the very top, I have my toolbar, my main toolbar. And this gives me a number of different tools that are correlated to whatever menu set I'm working in. So another important drop-down menu here is this menu set drop-down menu. And this will, if I change what menu set I'm working in, it will change what the top toolbar's tools I have accessible to. So I choose rigging menu set, and it will change some of these latter drop-down menus. Animation gives us different tools. Maya is industry standard animation software with really powerful capabilities for rendering, simulation, rigging, animation, and modeling. And so there, we can't fit all of the tools in just one interface. So there's a lot of nested tools. And there's also a lot of different ways to access the same tools or to complete the same processes. So let me go back to my modeling menu set, and this is the menu set we're going to be working in this course. If you hover over any icon in the interface, you can see that there's a little pop-up help bar that that shows up, and this will tell you exactly what that particular tool does. And we also have a help bar at the very bottom, which displays the same information that you'll see with this little pop-up box. Okay, so it's if you want to know what a tool does or what a particular icon does, then you can just kind of hover over it, and it will give you information about what that tool or icon is used for. So under this main menu set, and we have some menus that we have some applications that are kind of universal, like file, and we can start a new scene, open a scene, import, export, etc. We have edit, create, etc. Okay. We also have these icons right below this main toolbar, and this allows us to, create a new file, open a file, save a file, etc. We're able to open and collapse. This basically just gives us different icons that do the same thing that some of the selections that we have here in the toolbar itself. But here I have some snapping tools, and these will come in handy, and I'll get into those a little bit later in the semester. And we also have some rendering tools as well. Here are some icons for rendering. So I can open and collapse any of these and kind of adjust this top toolbar if I want to get rid of some of the clutter, some of the visual clutter. I can collapse some of the things that I won't be using. Then below this, we have what's called the shelf. The shelf, again, is just a series of icons that have been collected together to perform particular functions. So for polymodeling, I have a shelf here. That's all of my main tools I would need for polymodeling. We're going to get into polymodeling next week, but this week we're going to be working with curves and surfaces, so we can use this shelf here, the curves and surfaces shelf. Sculpting, rigging, etc. So there are these different tabs, and then we can change the shelf and the tools I have accessible on the shelf by clicking these different tabs. Okay, so to the left of the viewport, I have my main toolbar. This gives me access to my selection tools and my transform tools. Within Maya, we will mostly be selecting objects or components of objects, and then using these transform tools of move, scale, and rotate, which we'll get into in the next video. And then below these tools, I have tools for, I have different icons for setting the viewport here. So I have my single pane view, or I have 4 panel view, a 2-panel view. And at the very bottom of that, I have my outliner. And the outliner is just a list of every object that you have in your scene. There are some that come default, including these different cameras, which are what we're using to view our scene: perspective, top, front, and side, and then default light and object sets. In the viewport itself, we have this grid, and this grid is not an indicator of boundaries of the 3D workspace. It is only showing us what the center origin of the workspace is, and then giving us kind of units on which we can base our overall modeling or animation off of. So this is only a reference guide. It's not at all, we don't need to be staying within the bounds of this, this grid. The grid is only for reference. The bottom left, I have an icon that shows me which axis orientation my scene is in. And so it also indicates which is a positive and negative direction in each of the axes. So where this little line exists is in the positive direction, and then in the other way is the y is like negative. This x is negative and z is negative. And then the bottom here, it says perspective. So this tells me what kind of camera what camera I'm looking at the scene through. And I can change that based by going to this menu bar here, which is embedded within the viewport. So I can change, for example, and look at this from a top view or from my perspective view. Those orthographic views give us a 2-dimensional view into either the top, front, sides, back, etc. Below this menu set, I have a number of icons here. A lot of these tools are also found within these different drop-down menus at the top of the toolbar, but again, I have some icon access that I can collapse and open as I see fit. And we'll get into some of these and how to adjust your viewport a little bit later on. To the right of the viewport, I have really important panels that I can access with these tabs. So there's these tabs that have been nested into this particular side panel, the channel box layer editor, the modeling toolkit, and the attribute editor. And we'll get into what these do in a later video. But these also correlate to these icons at the top here. This one is the modeling toolkit. This one here is my attribute editor, and this one at the very end is channel box layer editor. This little character icon, don't worry about it. We're not gonna get into character controls, but we will. This shows and hides the tool settings, and this is something that I actually like to just bring up and embed right here in the side of my interface. So I can manipulate any part of the interface by dragging and dropping windows. I'm waiting for this little blue thing to highlight, a blue highlight to appear, and then I can drop my tool settings into the side. I also like to do this with the outliner, and I like my outliner to be nested next to my, my tool settings. And I'll do that by dragging and dropping this particular menu next to my tool settings. So I have my tool settings in my outliner on the side here, and I can collapse this down and just have my viewport accessible. At the very bottom, I have the timeline, and this is not something that we're going to be working with this semester. This is the animation timeline, but just so you know what it is, that's at the very bottom of the interface. It's also important to know, like I said, that there are multiple ways of accessing the same tool within Maya. And so another way to access every tool and menu is by pressing spacebar over the viewport. And I have to minimize Maya in order to be able to do it, but if I press spacebar, now I have every menu and tool that has been also kind of embedded and nested within the viewport itself. Okay, so in the next video, we will go into the transform tools and navigating within the viewport.